Broadcasting live from the Capitol OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning. Welcome to Racing Across America on this Sunday morning. I am Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. A little Sunday morning action as usual. We'll recap some of the stakes action, and there was plenty of it yesterday. Lots of stakes at Woodbine, lots of stakes at Churchill. We'll be joined later in the show by our friend Frank Vespe from the racingbiz.com. He was at Pimlico yesterday for the nice stakes day they had. We talked to John Piasek yesterday in preview of that, and we'll review some of the nice stakes yesterday at Pimlico towards the end of the show. But again, plenty of Woodbine, plenty of Churchill. Also going to pull up from last Tuesday. I had it scheduled for yesterday, and I didn't get to it. We'll pull up from Tuesday the Prince of Wales Stakes out at Fort Erie. Talked a little bit about it yesterday with Ron Gierkink. We had him on in preview of Woodbine Mile Day and the nice stakes at Woodbine. Ron, of course, covers Woodbine for the Daily Racing Forum, so we'll do the Fort Erie Stake as well. And we'll toss in the Jockey Club Oaks Invitational at Belmont as well. All of that coming up on this Sunday morning edition of Racing Across America. Let me remind you that today is a football Sunday here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Come on down, enjoy all the football action and all the horse racing action right here, Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. We'll see what the Jets can do and follow up to their nice win to start the season, although 4 plays. How could I only get 4 plays out of Aaron Rodgers? By Syracuse, as an alumni of Syracuse, alumnus, it was nice to watch the win on NBC last night. They got primetime coverage and looked pretty good against Purdue. Man, the quarterback, 4 rushing touchdowns, and he could have had a 5th, I think, that last drive where they were just trying to run out the clock. They didn't replay it in a fashion that at least I didn't see. Again, they had a couple of replays, but in a fashion that guaranteed he was going to get in. But it looked like the field, it was a crazy play. It was a crazy good fake. He kind of put the ball on his hip and watched the guy he faked it to go into the line, and everybody bought it, and then he reversed and went around, and nobody was there. But again, at that point, they were just trying to run out the clock, so he just starts trotting down the field and then falls down to, let the clock my thinking was, if you can run in for a touchdown, run in for the touchdown. That's as good as running out the clock. You would have been 3 scores ahead at that point, and so it would have been done. But it was going to work out either way. Run out the clock, you're ahead a couple of scores. But Syracuse now 3-0. We'll see. 2 of the opponents were a little bit overmatched. But last night, a Big Ten opponent looked pretty good against Purdue. So far for me, I'm 3 weeks into the college season, 1 week into the NFL season, and things are coming up roses. But being a Jets fan, that can't last. We'll see. Do want to remind you that coming up on Friday, I'm going to have a $150 late pick 5 bankroll. You can enter online for that, and the online entries will open up on Wednesday at the website. So keep that in mind. Wednesday, entries will open up for the online bankroll. Probably open up when I come in here on because I'm usually the one that clicks that on the website. So I'll probably do it when I come in just before I go on the air Wednesday afternoon sometime. So again, keep that in mind. They'll be open for a day and a half or so. Plenty of time for you to get your entry in to see if you can make the Friday OTB Live $150 pick 5 bankroll team. All right. As noted, lots of great action yesterday, but we're going to start out going back to Tuesday. I talked a little bit about this one with Ron Gierkink. Second leg of the Canadian Triple Crown, which is very unique because the first leg is now on the synthetic at Woodbine, the second leg on the dirt at Fort Erie, and the third leg will go on the grass at Woodbine. So it's a tough triple to put in the back pocket, but Paramount Prince was trying it for Mark Cassidy, having won the King's Plate and won pretty nicely. I thought I scratched my head at the price, the 8-1 price Paramount Prince won the King's Plate at, because it was Mark Cassidy who does so well at Woodbine, coming off a win in the plate trial, but they let the horse escape a little bit. So Paramount Prince had won the King's Plate and wound up going off at 5-2 as the second choice, surprisingly, Um, in the Prince of Wales this past Tuesday, the favorite was Stanley House, who had run third in the King's Plate. So again, it was a little bit surprising that the betting public went in that direction. Stanley House, the favorite, runs a disappointing seventh. Paramount Prince is the number 8 and set all the fractions and gets caught here and gets caught for second even. You can see him there on the rail. But the winner was Velocitor, the number 10. Paramount Prince ran very well in defeat. Paramount Prince was out in early fractions on an off track, as you can see. This is last Tuesday at Fort Erie. 22 and change, 45 and change, 110 and change. And Paramount Prince was setting the fractions and was pushed by 13-1 Ottawa. Ottawa, who was right up there early on those fractions with Paramount Prince, winds up running last in the field of 11. So Paramount Prince ran very well, pushed with the early fractions and held on and just missed second, got caught a neck back in third from second place. But Velocitor kind of was sitting off of those early pace setters, made the first run and got it done. I said yesterday with Ron Gearking, though, boy, if you played Velocitor, I'm not sure you got paid correctly. Velocitor $17.70, but Velocitor had finished fourth behind Paramount Prince in the King's Plate at 71-1. Had finished fourth behind Paramount Prince in the plate trial at 45-1, and goes off Tuesday at 7-1. So again, look good, got it done. Congratulations. It just seemed like an oddly short price given what the horse had gone off at and run fourth in both of them in the previous two races. So as I say, you got $17 and change. You're going to take that to the it spends just the same whether the odds were right or not, but the odds just seemed a little short there on that one. As I say, Paramount Prince ran well. We'll see who shows up in the third leg. Again, now no Triple Crown up there on the line with Paramount Prince getting beaten. But both races, I mean, the King's Plate this year, 17 out at Fort Erie, one scratch. You had a nice field of 11. So both legs of the Canadian Triple Crown so far attracting nice fields in there. All right, we will move on now to some of the action from yesterday, and we'll start out Belmont at the Big A yesterday. Completed their series, the triple for the 3-year-old fillies. First leg was the Belmont Oaks back in July. The second leg, the Saratoga Oaks in August. And the third leg was the Jockey Club Oaks Invitational yesterday at 1 mile and 3/8. I was against the It seems like the Appleby juggernaut had slowed down enough that you could maybe take a shot against. I thought Highland Grace for a Barkley tag was interesting coming off the win on July 4th. Now, I've been on the sideline since, but it had been working okay. So I went with Highland Grace, and that one went off as the second choice at 3-1. The favorite was the Charlie Appleby horse. I had that one down in the third spot. I thought Sperling Beag was maybe a little bit interesting, but Appleby gets it done, and we'll see. This wasn't the only North American race he scored with. You can see the Appleby horse coming on the outside, big late charge under Jamie Spencer, going to get up and get it done by a neck over. And I'm just trying to, Nisi Marie, I'm assuming is how you pronounce that, Nisi Marie, who went off at 14-1, and then Sperling Beag ran third, and the horse I liked, Highland Grace, fourth in there. But Jamie Spencer and Charlie Appleby combined to get it done with Eternal Hope. Again, a horse that had 5 starts over in Europe and had faced some nice ones over there. So on the company lines, maybe deserved to wind up as the favorite. Goes off at even money, $4 the price, and gets the third win in 6 career starts, including a grade 3 victory yesterday here. That was the first grade or group win for the Godolphin runner. Had only tried a couple of group races over in Europe. The 2 wins were in ungroup stakes races. Or races. One of them was a little stake. One was a maiden race. But it tried the Epsom Oaks. It was well beaten in that grade 1 at Epsom. Followed it up with a 3rd at Deauville in a group 2, and then comes over here and gets the grade 3 race to sweep the 3-year-old filly turf series in New York for the Euros. That first leg, the Belmont Oaks back in July, it was Aspen Grove up at Saratoga, Elusive Princess. And again, all of them Euros. So Euros do manage to sweep the New York series for the 3-year-old girls. And that was at Belmont yesterday with Charlie Appleby getting it done there. All right, let's move on to Woodbine, and we'll kind of work our way up to the Woodbine Mile. Nice card yesterday that included the 2-year-old stakes, 2-year-old win in your ends. I talked to Tom Bellhouse a few days ago, and he noted they were headed up there with Carson's Run. Carson's Run had broken the maiden in the career debut at Saratoga back at the end of July. Then at the end of August, tried the With Anticipation and finished a very close-up second to Gala Brand, who I think is a very talented runner. So that was a nice effort. Dylan Davis was on board for both of those races at Saratoga, and he shipped up to Woodbine yesterday to ride Carson's Run in the Summer Stakes. My Boy Prince was the 9-5 favorite. Now, the race was delayed a little bit when My Boy Prince had to have a shoe repair. So I don't know whether that's notable or not, but My Boy Prince, as the favorite, winds up second after having set all of the early pace. But coming from way back early, Carson's Run, the number 2 horse, you can see on the outside there under Dylan Davis, will get it done and eventually win pretty easily. The chart margin's over 2 lengths. My Boy Prince, gutsy, holds on for second. The number 3 horse, and Go With Gusto runs 3rd. But again, it's our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds and Company, Christophe Clement trainee. This was win number 2 and start number 3. And it is a grade 1 win on the resume, also being a win in your in race. So I would certainly assume with the West Point connections, they will be headed to the Breeders' Cup in the juvenile turf off a nice victory. They have a nice little one. And then they had the winner of the Virginia Derby the other day on the 3-year-old turf side of things. So West Point going gangbusters on the turf in the last couple of weeks with some nice wins, including that win up at Woodbine yesterday that, as I say, sends them to the Breeders' Cup. Again, when we talked to Ron Geerkink yesterday, we talked a little bit about the Vigil, grade 3 event for the sprinters, and noted that this race was going to be interesting because of Patches O'Houlihan, who going into yesterday's Vigil was 6 for 7 overall. Came in with a 5-race win streak. An Ontario bred that had a couple of stakes races, 2 and 3 back, that were restricted stakes races, but in the prior start had won a Group 3, an open, obviously, Group 3, Grade 3, the Bold Venture, and had done that pretty easily. Just a really talented runner. 5 for 5 over the Woodbine main track. The lone loss was on the turf at Woodbine last year, but this year had followed up and gotten a turf win at Woodbine. But on the synthetic side of things, 5 for 5, and Patches O'Houlihan goes off as the 6-5 favorite yesterday. Had to work for it. Patches O'Houlihan is the number 6 horse here. Last American exit as the longest price in the field. The number 5 horse is going to give him all he can ask for as they get close to the wire. And Secret Reserve runs 3rd. Rock Crest runs 4th. You can see they're right there on the wire. But you could live, I felt Patches O'Houlihan had held when they showed the slow-mo replay. You could see it was a nice ding-dong finish. I mean, we're talking a chart margin, nose, head, neck amongst the first 4. but on live, it felt that way. And then when you watch the replay, the slow-mo, you could tell that Patches O'Houlihan had held on. So, again, this is a very talented sprinter based up in Canada and Woodbine, who is now 7 for 8 lifetime. You got to love that. But also notable, trained by Robert Tiller, who trained Pink Lloyd, who was very, very talented on the sprint side up in Canada as well. So he follows it up now with a very talented sprinter again. But it was also notable, the follow-up articles said Robert Tiller, he missed the race. He was stuck in an elevator, which that Woodbine elevator that would take you from the and that may not have been the elevator he was in, but I will note the Woodbine elevator that takes you from the press box floor, which is up in the top of the facility, and brings you down a few floors to where you can kind of move around. It may be the slowest elevator of all time. So, and again, that may not have been the elevator, but may be indicative of other elevators in the facility. I can remember being up there, and you leave the press box and you want to go someplace to get an interview or whatnot, and you kind of, okay, we're on a little bit of a schedule here, and you can time it. You stand by the door and press the button. You time it with a sundial. So as I say, it may just be indicative of the situation. But Robert Tiller missed the race because he was stuck in an elevator up there, which I found appropriate, I suppose. But nonetheless, happy to get the victory and happy to be down in the winner's circle and happy to have a horse like Patches O'Houlihan, who, again, very, very good. All right, on the female side of things, and we noted yesterday when we talked to Ron Gierkink, these 2-year-old stakes were intriguing to see how they played out when scratches came, because some of the fillies were cross-entered in the boys' race and wound up over there. And so it was kind of like, who's going to go? Go with Gusto was one of those, and she winds up a nice third in the boys' version for Mark Cassie. So she scratches out of the Natalma. Arosa also scratched out of the Natalma. I like Brock Nardini. Oof, he was horrible. She was horrible. Up the debut win up at Saratoga, just showed nothing there. Had a little troubled start, but not enough to run as poorly as she did. She feels pretty the eventual winner I had down at the bottom of my mix. But I will note it's the number 11 horse, so you can see right there starting to make the move under Johnny V. Johnny Velasquez was on board. She feels pretty getting it done. Running second was Simply in Front at 29-1, the 7 horse, and Dazzling Star gets up for third in here. She feels pretty coming out of a debut win at Ellis, but back in the middle of July. So it was kind of notable, a little bit of a layoff. The win was okay, nice gutsy win. The buyer wasn't much, but as I say, I put the horse in the bottom of the mix because by Caracantai, so lived up to that, winning the first out, and trained by Cherie DeVoe, who is doing very well. But it was also notable, speaking of Cherie DeVoe, I think her sister was the one that was quoted in the follow-ups as her assistant, was up in Woodbine, obviously taking care of things. And she noted first grade 1 for Cherie DeVoe. So again, congratulations to the team there. We had her on up at Saratoga towards the beginning of the meet as she was kind of bouncing back and forth, Saratoga and her Kentucky base. And this one did get it done at that Kentucky base this summer back in July. Now 2 for 2, the Maiden Breaker, and a grade 1 worth the better part of a $500,000 purse. So again, congratulations to Cherie DeVoe and company, Lyell Stable, and Johnny Velasquez on the win. First grade 1 win, and like the boys version, I believe, I'm virtually certain, a win in your end. So we'll see if they head to, you would think that'll be the game plan, head to the Breeders' Cup with that one. And finally, at Woodbine yesterday, the highlight of the day was the Woodbine Mile grade 1 event, $1 million up for grabs. I took a little pop again against the Charlie Appleby because, as I say, I don't think the Juggernaut was quite as potent this year as it had been. Well, that changed yesterday with the win in New York and the win in the Woodbine Mile. Master of Time, I put that one right underneath when we talked to Ron Geerkink yesterday. We showed the lead-up race for Master of the Seas, which looked pretty good. The Summer Mile, a Group 2 at Ascot in the middle of July. Master of Seas looked pretty good there and comes over and gets it done yesterday in the Woodbine Mile. Cheryl Spite, who we talked about with Ron and had, I would guess, star-crossed year, a tough year. I don't know how you would label it, but going overseas earlier this year. But now stringing a couple together, was able to run well. Cheryl Spite. I used War Bomber, the 2-horse. That one winds up a well-beaten 4th. But they're all well-beaten because Master of the Seas chart margin winds up to be just about 4 lengths. But a very easy victory under William Buick. Winning your in race, and Charlie Appleby capitalized on that last year when he won this race with Modern Games and then went on to win the mile at the Breeders' Cup. So we'll see what the game plan is. The follow-up articles weren't certain. It sounded like they were going to head back to the UK with Master of the Seas and then decide about the Breeders' Cup. But in the next day or two, I would think that would sort itself out a little bit. It was the 8th Grade 1 victory at Woodbine for Charlie Appleby. Pretty nice record for a guy not, based across the pond, as it were, to come over and get it done that often. 8 Grade 1 victories at Woodbine for Charlie Appleby. And again, one of those being last year's Woodbine Mile with Modern Games. So follows it up, Master of the Seas, getting it done. 7th career victory in 14 starts. And with the better part of 6, I would think yesterday went over $1 million. So Master of the Seas becomes a millionaire in start number 14, victory number 7. And again, all year long, I've been a little skeptical, or most of the year, a little skeptical of the Appleby horses, where, as I say, the juggernaut hasn't been quite as powerful. Well, I think my opinion changed yesterday. It looked like he got back on the beam, as it were, with the win in New York and the win up at Woodbine. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look. There was a nice little stake at Delaware. I don't think I mentioned that at the top of the show. Talked a little bit about it yesterday in preview. We'll watch that, the Cape Henlopen. We'll take a look at some of the Churchill action. And then a little bit later on, we'll be joined by Frank Vespe of the RacingBiz.com. He was at Pimlico yesterday for a nice stakes day in Maryland. All of that when Racing Across America continues. Stay tuned.
No matter where in the world you are, the excitement of wagering on horse racing is just a click away. You'll get live streaming, past performances, race replays, our virtual tote board, analysis and selections from professional handicappers, a simple, safe, and secure wagering platform, and best of all, you get track prices. CapitalOTBBet.com. Bet any place, anytime at CapitalOTBBet.com. And be sure to download our new mobile app from the iTunes Store or Google Play.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Seth Merrow in the studio. Again, thanks for joining us as always. I always like to remind people as we're close to Saratoga, if you know people who were in town for Saratoga and liked the programming and said, gee, I wish we had this where we were. And they went back home. I meet people up season long, and more people are now aware of it and say to me, hey, I'm down in Long Island. I watch you. I'm down in Florida, and I watch you. But remind people that we are available, the morning programming on our Capital OTB YouTube channel, some of the other social media platforms via Roku. And as I say, more and more people are kind of getting aware of that, because I hear that from folks, but I do still hear from people, gee, I'd love to be able to watch you, and I alert them. If you do watch on the YouTube channel, don't forget, like, subscribe, leave a comment, positive comment, hopefully. But if you do that kind of thing, that moves us up the search algorithm, and so just allows it to be exposed to more people who might be interested. People who are searching for horse racing type of things, that'll move up a little bit. So as I say, like, subscribe, make some comments. But again, remind people that we're out there. We appreciate that, because it'll help spread the word. Yesterday at Delaware, I noted it yesterday because there were a couple of interesting horses in the Cape Henlopen. A couple of scratches, so it scratched down to a field of 8. But it was still a nice little field in here. A couple $100,000 up for grabs, a mile and a half on the grass at Delaware. The two notable horses, Tawny Port, who last year had been a nice little 3-year-old for Brad Cox. 7th in the Kentucky Derby, but he'd won the Lexington, he'd won the Ohio Derby, he was 3rd in the Jim Dandy. So Tawny Port had some ability, wasn't knocking it dead, wasn't sitting up at the top of the class, but was running well against some of the better members of the class. Now, this year, moves into the barn of Christophe Clement, and they tried the turf. Flopped in the Bowling Green at the beginning of the Saratoga meet in the first turf start, but then followed up in the restricted John's Call with a nice win. And so Tawny Port in the third turf start of the career was a little bit interesting yesterday. But another one, the venerable Cross Border at 9 years old, coming off a third place finish at an optional claimer up at Saratoga. Earlier this season, he had gone over the jumps and won a jump race at Aiken down in South Carolina. And given that 9 years old, they have him over the jumps, you might have thought, Cross Border, maybe the flat career. And the follow-up article to yesterday's Cape Henlopen in the Daily Racing Forum by Dan Illman, he has a paragraph here. Rumors of Cross Border's demise on the flat were greatly exaggerated. And that's the case here. As the 9-year-old gets it done, Cross Border will be the number 8 horse here, with a nice late run to get up and win pretty easily over number 7, Tawny Port, who had gone out and set the early fractions. Trevor McCarthy on Tawny Port tried to steal it, and it looked like that was going to be the case. And you can see this is the first time around, because it is a mile and a half, and Tawny Port is setting, an easy lead here. And Trevor McCarthy, the Dan Illman article kind of notes, let me see if I can find the wording here. He said, looked as if McCarthy tried to steal away to an insurmountable advantage early on the backstretch. And you can see him working a little bit here. But as Illman said, as he scrubbed on the chalk to keep extending, the rest of the field wouldn't let Tawny Port shake completely clear. And you can kind of see that happening. Tawny Port, though, even though getting some work here, opens up enough to eventually will hold on and run pretty clear second. Tough Tickets third, Commandeer fourth. But again, we will see the stretch run from Cross Border. You can see sitting back in next to last position. Sitting 7th back there. And you can see Cross Border tips out under Ruben Silvera, and you can see the momentum starting to come. Tawny Port's still running well. Tawny Port's still going well. And as I say, we'll wind up a clear second. But on the outside, here comes the old guy and mows him down late. Again, chart margin just over 2 lengths, over 3 lengths from second to third. So again, Tawny Port ran very well, but could not hold off the 9-year-old late. And as I say, the race was ungraded little stakes race down at Delaware, but with those two horses in there, it was certainly a lot of fun to watch and played out. The two horses you want kind of had a little something going. Tawny poured out in front. Was he going to hold on? And then a big late run from cross border. So that was kind of fun. All right, let's go down to Churchill and take a look at some of the stake section down there. This is another one that had a nice story, and at the Louisville Thoroughbred Society short field, there was only a field of 6 in here, sprinters, but Strobe, who had shown some promise for Brad Cox, was in the mix, but maybe more importantly, Bango was the one to watch. Bango, who had 10 wins in 18 career starts at Churchill, goes to make it 11 off a win over at Ellis in a stake back on the 1st of July. So sat off most of the summer, but came back yesterday for a trainer, Greg Foley, and gets it done. The you get a horse like this that becomes a fan favorite, and that was clear yesterday. Tyler Gaffleone on board. Number 4, Bango gets it done. $1.16 to the dollar odds. Strobe, the 6-5 second choice, showed some punch early, but faded and ran 6th. Again, he had shown some class in the career, but hadn't kind of fulfilled when asked at certain points. But Bango certainly did, with a gutsy head victory over Gulfstream Way, who was right there and seemed poised to move by. But Bango said, no, I am the king of Churchill, and lives up to it. Yesterday's win tied Bango with Reddy's Rocket for all-time wins at Churchill Downs. Now they each have 11. Greg Foley, the trainer, expected Bango to get a shot at making the record solo his sometime in November. We'll see. Reddy's Rocket, the co-leader, all of his wins were in claimers and starter allowances. So on the class level, clearly Bango with some stakes victories like yesterday. His road was a little bit tougher than Reddy's Rocket, but 11 victories, and there were smiles, and there was a nice, printed up poster that they all held up in the winner's circle yesterday for Bango, who, again, that kind of a performer has a nice fan following, and they all enjoyed it yesterday. The Open Mind, this is for the fillies and mares, sprinting. I like Wicked Halo in here. That one did go off as the short-priced favorite, but will disappoint. Uguri gets the victory. This is a horse that had some class earlier in the career. Last year tried the Kentucky Oaks and didn't show much, but was coming out of a win in the Fantasy before that. 2 starts back this year, had won the Saylorville at Prairie Meadows, tried the synthetic in the previous start at Presque Isle and didn't get it done there. But as I say, there was some back class, and Uguri lived up to that yesterday pretty easily, winning by 3 lengths. So nice win there. Flavien Prat, Rudy Brissett getting it done in the Open Mind yesterday down at Churchill. 2-year-old action, I say it all the time, 2-year-old action, not just on the stakes side of things, but in the maiden races and a first-level allowance, if those go. The fall, the September meet, and particularly the one a little bit later on, produce 2-year-olds that are definitely worth watching. So we'll see if that plays out again this year. I expect it to with the 2-year-old stakes yesterday. The Pocahontas, I had the eventual winner down in the 3rd spot. I lost my top pick, but I moved up number 9, Hot Beach. That one's going to wind up 3rd in here, and a well-beaten 3rd as the winner kind of runs away with it. But I had used VV's Dream, the winner, down at the bottom of my mix. It's a Ken McPeak runner that debuted with a really nice victory at Churchill back in May, then went into a 2-year-old stake and ran a close-up second at Ellis in the 2nd career start. This was the 3rd start. But do note that 2nd career start, the debutante at Ellis, ran a half length behind the winner. The winner? Bright Work, who went on to maybe flatter that performance with the nice wins up at Saratoga. This Bright Work looked great. So again, that close-up second to Too Bright Works said Vivi's dream may be something. Spent most of the summer on the sidelines for Ken McPeak. Came back very nicely yesterday to win the chart margin just under 9 lengths. Brian Hernandez on board, regular guy riding for Ken McPeak. So Ken McPeak, a nice little 2-year-old filly you would have to think going forward. Gets it done at the mile yesterday. And the 2-year-old boys side of things, Risk It was the one taking all the action. I don't think Risk It ran badly, but at 6-5, it was certainly disappointing. The winner in here, though, West Saratoga. This one's kind of interesting. West Saratoga, this was the 6th career start. 1 win, 3 seconds in 5 starts prior. But the last win at Ellis, when stretched out to a mile, was clearly the best of the career and seemed to indicate maybe a light bulb moment. And that's now what it looks like. West Saratoga's the 2-horse here. Moves off, wins by just under a couple of lengths. Number 3, Risk It. Number 8, Risk It, excuse me. Number 8, Risk It is going to wind up holding on for second. Liberal Arts third, Sees the Gray fourth. And Risk It was coming off of a nice big win up at Saratoga in the debut effort. Son of Gun Runner, Winchell Thoroughbred, Steve Asmussen. So 6-5, you can see why with those connections and that nice win. And as I say, disappointed a little bit, but sometimes it's new track, stretched out to the mile off the 6 furlongs up at Saratoga. A little bit of a salty group, certainly. So I'm not going to, I want to see maybe one more from Risk It. But West Saratoga, as I say, I think just has kind of figured it out. Now strings a couple together. I didn't see the number. The number in the maiden breaker for West Saratoga was a pretty solid 81. I haven't seen any numbers yesterday in any of these stakes races yet, but we'll see what West Saratoga got. And finally, down at Churchill yesterday, it was the Locust Grove for the Fillies and Mayors going a mile and a 16th. And I'll tell you what, this was a nice field in here. I had search results on top, but Hidden Connection, who has run very well throughout the career, Pauline's Pearl for Steve Asmussen, and Stone Street, who's a nice stakes winner in her own right. I had search results on top, and search results will get it done here, and pretty easily as the 9-5 favorite. Hidden Connection, though, runs well. Hidden Connection, the number 6, runs second. Misty Vale, third. Pauline's Pearl, fourth. But search results, Tyler Gaffleone on board for Chad Brown and Klarovich, coming out of a third-place finish in the Molly Pitcher. But more importantly, 2 starts back, it just missed in the, the Ogden Phipps against Clairiere, and kind of runs back to that effort here, you would think. Again, the number 4 horse chart margin is over 3 lengths over Hidden Connection. So nice win for Chad Klarovich and Tyler Gaffleone in the Locust Grove Grade 3 event down at Churchill Downs. All right, that takes you through some of the action at Woodbine, Belmont, Delaware, Churchill. And as noted a little earlier, we'll take a break now. We'll come back. Our friend Frank Vespe will join us, and we'll take a look at some of the Pimlico action, because again, they had really nice stakes on the card yesterday as well. We'll touch on that and more right after this. Stay tuned.
What if there was a way to become a better horse player, to have a better knowledge of the game, to be more successful? What if there were a way to take what you've learned, what you know, and make better decisions, better choices? In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
No matter where in the world you are, the excitement of wagering on horse racing is just a click away. You'll get live streaming, past performances, race replays, our virtual tote board, analysis and selections from professional handicappers, a simple, safe, and secure wagering platform, and best of all, you get track prices. CapitalOTBBet.com. Bet any place, anytime at CapitalOTBBet.com. And be sure to download our new mobile app from the iTunes Store or Google Play.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on a Sunday morning, a Sunday after a great stakes afternoon across the country yesterday. Part of that, as noted earlier, was down at Pimlico. We had John Piasek on yesterday from the Maryland Horse Breeders Association in preview of that. And in review, we are joined now by our friend Frank Vespe from the RacingBiz.com. Frank, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Seth. Good to join you this morning.
Yeah, I joined you a couple of times via radio up at Saratoga. And of course, when we're at Saratoga, we don't really do the phone things, but we're happy to have you back on here on our side of things. Talk a little bit about the radio show. And for folks who aren't familiar with it, can they catch archives of that as well?
Yes. Yeah. The show airs every Saturday morning at 10 on WNST, which is AM 1570 in Towson. And they can catch the replay of it on the RacingBiz.com. I'll have yesterday's up later on this afternoon. So yeah, on the RacingBiz.com, go to the Off to the Races radio tab, and you can catch all the replays of that show. And also we have a show in Virginia that airs on ESPN Richmond and ESPN Harrisonburg, and you can catch the replays of that as well.
Excellent. And I always tout the RacingBiz.com, great coverage of racing in the Mid-Atlantic region and more. And that means yesterday, and I noted you tweeted out some pictures. You were at Pimlico. Talked to John again yesterday, who does some work for you guys as well. And he said it was a Chamber of Commerce day. Is that how it played out?
It couldn't have been a nicer day. I mean, the weather was just perfect. It was, just cool enough so that it was comfortable without, sometimes you get the oppressive heat and you didn't. It was just cool enough. So it was just gorgeous weather. I mean, the only negative, I guess, were the scratches. There were a lot of scratches, which was too bad. But other than that, it was just a perfect day.
Yeah, and that noted that obviously in the highlight, the Baltimore-Washington International Turf Cup scratched down to a field of 4. We'll take a look at that as we talk about it. I like Smokin' Tea for Shug coming out of a try in the Mint Million at Kentucky Downs, and a pretty good try, a near-miss third-place finish. But before that, had won the Lure up at Saratoga. I liked it. Betting public made it the 6-5 favorite, but in the field of 4, Smokin' Tea can do no better than third. Smokin' Tea is going to be the number 7 here on the replay. It winds up to be highest distinction, getting it done over King Vegas. Smokin' Tea third. He's pure gold. Will wind up the field of 4. Nice late run here from highest distinction, though. Chart margin winds up to be just under 4 lengths. Your thoughts in the International Turf Cup?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say here is a name that you want to kind of put in the back of your brain and keep an eye on is Lindsay Schultz. She's the trainer of highest distinction. I don't believe I had heard of her until 2 or 3 months ago, but since the middle of July, she's had 4 stakes wins, her first 4 as a trainer, including now 2 in graded stakes and 2 with this horse. So pay a little bit of attention to her. I thought it was a good ride here from Jairo Rendon, and this horse is just absolutely razor sharp right now. And he's won 3 straight, including the Oceanport. And his one loss in that period is to Catnip, who turned around to win the Grade 3 Monmouth and then run second in the Grade 1 United Nations. So this horse is, he's one that had a little bit of promise as a younger horse. It kind of went sideways for him. but now he's really paying off on that promise. So maybe he's the second name to keep an eye on. Keep an eye on Lindsey Schultz. Keep an eye on Highest Distinction. This horse is in really good form.
Yeah, as you were talking, and you mentioned that because I found it intriguing. I pulled up the Equibase and kind of came on the scene last year, it looks like, did Lindsey Schultz. And they have that bar graph, and the bar graph last year as compared to this year, it's much nicer this year. So I like that little tout to keep our eyes on the trainer who is going very well with a horse who's going very well as also.
Yeah, and actually, you had mentioned the radio show. I interviewed Lindsey on yesterday's program, and she's got an interesting background, actually. She's from Connecticut originally, which is not exactly a racing hotbed, and grew up sort of in the hunter-jumper world, and then went to college at Louisville and kind of fell in love with racing. She worked for Tom Proctor. She worked for some others, and struck out on her own a couple of years ago, and really, really doing well now.
Interesting. And maybe Connecticut, Acacia Courtney, of course, Connecticut. So maybe it's becoming a hotbed. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm just a little late to the party, but
me too.
I used to live there, and it was home to some of the most unusual OTBs I've ever been to, but no live racing in Connecticut.
But OTBs are fine, though, and unusual ones are maybe par for the course when you really get down.
But you might be right about that. I just remember I have two things, but the one I'll mention is standing in an OTB in Waterbury, which was kind of seedy, but you kind of expect that at OTBs. But they had no video of the races, just sound. So you would just listen to the call of the race. And it's like, and this was in the 2000s, and it felt like about 1973. So interesting spot.
As you started talking, it dawned on me, boy, back in the day, I remember going in and listening to it. And I was about to ask you about that, and you brought it. But I'm thinking like 1980. In 2000, I guess that would be a little bit. Took a while to catch up down there in Connecticut.
Exactly. Land of steady habits and all that.
All right, ninth race yesterday at Pimlico, the Weather Vane. I like Miss Buchero. When I talked to John Piasek yesterday, he was in the same boat, and because of that, I thought, well, are we going to get the 5-1? And he said, well, I've been talking to other people, and the horse does seem to be getting a little bit of buzz. Sure enough, Miss Buchero, 3-2. I was not as enamored with Miss Buchero at 3-2, and for good reason. Miss Buchero winds up at the 3-2 favorite, running sixth in the field of 7. And I wasn't sure what to make off of the Penn National race, but the last workout was okay. So the things to like. The price wasn't one of them as the horse went up. But the eventual winner, Apple Picker, I have to admit, I left that one a little further down in my mix. And on further review at 8-1, Michael Dubb, Brittany Russell, a horse that started the career with some promise and was making an interesting turf to dirt move, was a little more interesting than the 8-1 price indicated. So on price, I should have flipped mine up because Apple Picker was far more attractive with an interesting story at 8-1. Your thoughts on the Weather Vane?
Yeah, I'd like to tell you that I was smart enough to get to Apple Picker, but I'm not, and I didn't. But no, you're exactly right. This is a horse they clearly liked early in her career. She won at first asking. They put her in the Adirondack. They put her in the Spinaway. Those didn't go too well. And then they gave her some time away and gave her to Brittany. And Brittany was saying, maybe those waters were a little too deep, so they tried her on the turf in the Stormy Blues, and she made a late run, but too late. And then they said, well, let's stretch her out on the turf in the Searching, and that didn't go well. So they were kind of like, well, let's go back to the dirt and kind of see what happens. And, I think Brittany and her husband Sheldon, who rode the horse, they won 2 stakes yesterday. And I kind of think they were kind of surprised, kind of like, oh, good, this is great. Now she can do this. And Brittany had kind of said, we've made no plans because we just weren't quite sure what was going to happen here. But I thought Sheldon gave her a perfect trip off the speed. You had talked to the judge and Ms. Buchero going at it, and Lake Frost was kind of up there too. And so just kind of sat forth and made the move. And that was clearly going to be the winning trip there. So I will be curious to see what happens next with this horse.
Yeah, and we talked about up-and-coming trainers. Certainly, you go back a couple of falls ago, and Brittany Russell went on everybody's radar at about 50%, and that has to include Michael Dubb, who has sent a few horses to her, including Apple Picker. And again, it was, given what happened yesterday, probably a good move because the New York Stakes Company, the waters were probably a little too deep, but fit in very nicely yesterday at 8-1.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're right. I mean, we were sort of talking yesterday about Brittany's career, and she is now getting a lot of like kind of the second string horses. Rapoli sending her horses, Dubb, Gold Square. You're seeing a lot of sort of high end owners sending the second string to Maryland and Brittany, which kind of makes you think at some point, the move to New York may be a thing that happens for her. So definitely another up and coming trainer, a little bit farther along the road than Lindsay Schultz is at this point, but certainly doing a good job with some good stock.
Could she go and leave Sheldon back in Maryland? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously we don't know the family dynamic, and Sheldon's a good rider. You know, if he had managed to stay healthy for much of his career, he would have had a really, he's had a nice career, but he would have had a really good career. But he's been injured just a million times, and that's really held him back from kind of putting up the numbers that would make people go like, oh, he is good.
He is definitely good. And again, they're based down in Maryland, so I'm not predicting anything. I think you're right, though. The trajectory for Brittany may be towards running more in New York. But I do think, and again, I'm not predicting anything, but Sheldon, I think, would be a great fit in the wintertime in New York.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've seen it with Trevor McCarthy, who, went up there and has done well at the Aqueduct meet, and, maybe scuffled a little bit more at Saratoga and maybe at Belmont, but there's plenty of money to be made in New York during the winter, and I think Sheldon would be fine there.
Speaking of Trevor McCarthy, I had Joe Migliore on, his agent, this summer. We were talking a little about Trevor and obviously Katie Davis, who had a really fun Saratoga meet. Obviously, being a local, when she got a win, the crowd would go out. And as you say, Trevor was kind of struggling a little bit at Saratoga, but he had a great meet when he went out of town at Monmouth. That gets overlooked a little bit. His summer was okay. It was just more on the Jersey Shore when he traveled down there.
Yeah, no, and it's actually, speaking of Trevor, I had him on the radio show yesterday as well, and he went down to Colonial Downs too for their closing day, and he won the Virginia Oaks and the Colonial Cup. So, Trevor's a really good rider, and he's going to find ways to win races, and he may not get all the opportunities at places like Saratoga that he'd like, but the kid's a good rider, so he'll get plenty of opportunities here and there. And he had a mount yesterday in the Cape Henlopen for Christophe Clement, which Tawny Port came in second there. But so that's helped him. Some of those guys may not use him that much in New York, but might like to send him out of town from time to time for a stakes run as well. So, a lot of ways to cobble this together if you're a pretty good rider.
Yeah, and when I had Joe on, Joe noted, Trevor was on the sidelines for a while with an injury, and it takes a while to kind of get back. But he as you noted, with Colonial, with the Monmouth and the ride yesterday, I showed that race earlier because Tawny Port was in there. It's an ungraded stake, but I showed it because Tawny Port was in there, and Cross Border was in there, and the venerable 9-year-old who won over the jumps earlier this year comes back and wins the Cape Henlopen. And I thought Tawny Port ran well after setting the early pace, but it was fun to see the 9-year-old win down at Delaware yesterday.
Yeah, I thought that was actually a really fun race.
Yeah.
Between the 9-year-old and then Tawny Port's just an interesting horse, and it was interesting. It looked like Trevor really wanted Tawny Port to kind of open it up on the backstretch, and he didn't quite open it up. And when I talked to Trevor about him, he said, well, he's sort of one-paced. He has a pretty high cruising speed. He can keep going and going, but he's not a big, sort of turn a foot kind of horse. And I think he kind of saw that. Like, even when he was kind of asking him, he was going pretty well, but he wasn't I think he wanted him to kind of get 7 clear and make him come, play catch me. And that didn't quite work out.
Yeah, the follow-up article in the Racing Forum by Dan Illman made that point, that it looked like, and then as I was quoting the article as we were watching the race, and you can see on the backstretch, he's working. He wants to open up. He just couldn't open up. But I thought he still ran a decent race, but it was fun to see the elder get it done again after having won a jump race earlier this year. And Illman in the article said the demise of cross country's flat career was greatly exaggerated, and so it was fun yesterday. A fun little ungraded stake. All right, let's get back to Pimlico. The all along yesterday, 1 1/8 on the grass, and I talked with John Piasek about this one, and I said, and I looked it up afterwards. I can't find anything, but I'd love to talk to Al Gold because he always has clever names. I got to find out what Full Count Felicia is all about. But Full Count Felicia, as you mentioned earlier, Brittany Russell training now some horses for Al Gold and Gold Swear. Gets it done yesterday in the all along. Full Count Felicia is going to be the number 1 horse here. The second choice behind Wallachia, who runs second as the 6-5 favorite, but Full Count Felicia was also 6-5. Just the favoritism tilted slightly towards the 2 horse. But you can see Full Count Felicia wins here very, very easily. Your thoughts on the all along?
Well, this was one of those races where, every once in a while you see a race and you say, like, every step this horse was a winner, and that was this race. There was never 1 second where the outcome of this race was in doubt. Full Count Felicia, kind of popped out of there on top right away, which actually, interestingly enough, wasn't the plan. I asked Brittany, was that the plan? And she said, not even a little bit. But basically what she and Sheldon had sort of discussed is don't choke her, let her get out. Don't choke her. If she ends up in front, that's fine. And if she doesn't, that's fine too. But just kind of let her do her thing. And this was a very, very impressive effort. I think this is another horse you may want to keep an eye on. I mean, she laid waste to this field, and Wallachia had looked like she was going to be okay. Creative Cairo looks like she might be okay, and neither of those horses was really in the same zip code as Full Count Felicia. So she's the horse that now has won 4 out of 5 since she got into Brittany's barn. And the one race she lost was the Virginia Oaks, which was probably a little bit of a heavy lift, off her maiden score. And, she finished behind Spirit and Glory and Sparkle Blue. Sparkle Blue's won, I think, a couple of graded stakes now. So that race may have been flattered a little bit since then, and now she's come back and won 3 more, and looks like she can find swim in deeper waters than these.
Yeah, you look early in the career when she was in New York for Chad Summers and Al Gold. She was showing some speed, but it looks like subsequently they just decided her style was off the pace, but not yesterday. Went back to the speed play and got it done pretty easily in the all along. The Light the Fuse yesterday. Again, this was a little bit of a scratch-reduced field of 5 in here. I like Jackson Traveler. I thought the Asmussen West Point runner might have found a nice field to kind of rebound to a better performance. Poof, that was not the case. At 6-1, Jackson Traveler winds up last in the field of 5. But the winner, number 1, Dollarization, 30-1 on the morning line, 18-1 in the scratch-reduced field as the longest price on the board, and wins pretty easily.
Does win pretty easily. And this figured to be one to where Craig is for Brittany and Sheldon. He was 1-2. Obviously, Jackson Traveler, a graded stakes winner. He figured to be a major player in here. And they ended up kind of taking each other out. They fought it out on the front end and then were unable to resist the late runners. Dollarization, as you said, wins easily. I thought this was a nice ride from Angel Rodriguez, who kind of bided his time and came between. But watching the replay, I mean, if you kind of spin it back onto the turn head of the lane area, he's sitting on a ton of horse, and he just needs a place to put him. And once he got that place, once he came between, he was easily best. This is a horse, the current owner, Jim Wolf, claimed this horse for $16,000 a couple of years ago, and I asked him what he what he had seen, and he basically said, well, he still had all his conditions. He had PA bred conditions, he had allowance conditions if he could be good enough. So, we like that, and now he's gone on. He's made this is going to get him close to $300,000, and I mean, he looks like he fits in these kind of stakes, these little $100,000 stakes here and there, and we have him in Maryland seems like 3 times a month. So he'll have plenty of opportunities. And one handicapping note, if you're looking for things in his form, you go back to the Let's Give Thanks in November. He was beaten 2 lengths by Repo Rocks, who then goes on to win a couple of graded stakes. So there was something there. I didn't get to it, but there was something there if you wanted to find it.
I didn't get to it either, but man, he made it look easy. That was a nice win. All right, let's look at the Ben's Cat, and I'll let you maybe reminisce a little. I talked to John Piasek, as they say, yesterday, and I wasn't sure if he was too young to maybe remember the meat of Ben's Cat's career. I mean, it wasn't that long ago he was racing, but the big part of the career was 8 or 10 years ago. But boy, for folks who don't remember Ben's Cat, some performer. And John noted King Leatherberry was placed in the Maryland Racing Hall of Fame just recently. King Leatherberry, the trainer of Ben's Cat. Let you reminisce about that one a little bit, because Ben's Cat, again, a very special horse down there in Maryland.
A very special horse. Actually, it was Ben's Cat was put in the Maryland Thoroughbred Hall of Fame. It's horses only, and I was fortunate enough to get a chance to interview King about it, about Ben's Cat and about his run, and he's very candid. Ben's Cat, he says, King is in the National Racing Hall of Fame, and Ben's Cat was kind of the horse that got him there, because he was sort of the horse that forced people to pay attention to King long enough to kind of reconsider what he had accomplished in his career and to realize how special that had been. And I will also tell you, King's favorite race at Ben's Cat, which is a lot of people's favorite race at Ben's Cat, was the last time he won, which was in the Jim McKay Turf Sprint when I think he was 10 years old. And it looked like there was no chance he could win in the middle of the stretch, and he ended up getting up to win. And one of the things King points out about that is he loves Dave Rodman's call, because he kind of goes, can he get there? And then when he does, it's the year of the cat. And, so it's good stuff. I mean, that was a really special horse. And people forget, early in his career, he had won a win and you're in the Breeders' Cup, and Ben's Cat was not Breeders' Cup nominated. So King was trying to figure out how to come up with $100,000 to nominate him, and thought he had a deal put together and then didn't. So he never did nominate him. But that year, horses that he beat in the race at Parks, which was the win and you're in, ran 1, 2, 3 in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint.
And again, for folks who aren't familiar with Ben's Cat, go look up King Leatherberry as well. Prolific trainer there on the Mid-Atlantic Circuit. So the 6 yesterday was named after Ben's Cat, $75,000 up for grabs. Wanted to show the replay here because it is the sibling to Caravel getting it done. Whitty will get it done as the 4-5 favorite. Heavy on Toledo on board. Elizabeth Merriman owning the original owner of Caravel, and Whitty continues the high performances of the offspring of ZZ Zoom Zoom. Your thoughts in the Ben's Cat?
Well, one thought here is this is almost certainly going to be a Maryland Million Turf Sprint preview, because Whitty and the runner-up, Sky's Not Falling, who was second ahead, are both Maryland sired. So that's one we'll probably keep an eye on. Whitty's an interesting horse. He had won a couple of stakes on the dirt, and for a minute you kind of thought, "Ooh, this guy might be a star," and that didn't quite happen. And he had some not so great tries on the turf, but more recently they put him on the turf, and he had run second in 3 consecutive stakes sprinting. And so this looks like his thing, sprinting on the turf. It looks like it's going to be his thing, same as Caravel, his half sister. So I think he's going to be a pretty okay turf sprinter. spotted in these sorts of spots. He's not a Breeders' Cup kind of horse. At least nothing we've seen from him suggests that. But in these kinds of races, he should be right there pretty much all the time. And parenthetically, there's another sibling on the way, a horse named Enzo, who's an unraced 2-year-old.
Okay. Well, so we'll watch for that one. Woody, I have to say the Connections must be happy, though, because 5 second-place finishes and 7 starts this year before that one. And so to hold off for that margin of victory, you have to wonder if your horse just isn't, wants to, in the stretch, wants to say, no, you go first. But yesterday it was very gutsy. All right, let's take a look at finally the stakes action. It kicked off on the afternoon with the Shine again. No surprise here. Intrepid Daydream is the even money favorite. John Piesic yesterday thought this horse looked pretty good. Off the recent form, I was right there as well. A couple of seconds, bookending a third, all pretty close up finishes. And Intrepid Daydream got it done yesterday in the Shine again.
Yeah, I talked to Larry Fowler afterwards, who's the owner breeder, and he was kind of saying, man, this was a long time coming. This is a horse that showed tremendous early promise. It won 2 of her first 3 starts by a combined total of like 27 lanes, but then got beat in the tax-free distaff at 2-5, got beaten the Caesar's Wish as the favorite, had a bunch of, races where ran well but didn't win as the favorite, and finally gets it done here and gets it done fairly decisively. I'll tell you what I'm really interested in. I want to see this horse go around 2 turns again, and that's something that trainer Gary Capuano talked about as well. This horse has only been around 2 turns 1 time. That was a maiden race, so sort of taken under advisement, but won by 16 lengths the one time she did it. And they haven't been able to find it. It's just hard to find 2-turn races that fit the condition that you're in. And, so they tried her on the 1-turn mile at Laurel, and she ran well to be third, beat less than a length behind Hybrid Eclipse and Award Wanted. But and this was a nice win going 3/4, but I hope they find her a 2-turn spot soon. I want to see what she does.
Yeah. And again, up at Saratoga, I'm in the mix with a lot of people on the show and just on the front side. And that's the lament from, I think folks who are fans don't realize how tough it is for owners to, sometimes you got to have a horse who's breaking down the barn or a horse who wants something specific. And it's just tough to get those in the condition book sometimes. I think a lot of people don't kind of realize that. And speaking of not realizing, Frank, before we let you go, they're at Pimlico, a little short meet at Pimlico. We were talking yesterday with John a little bit about Timonium and the Ferris wheel, and love to get down there at some point. But we don't have much time, and this maybe deserves a longer discussion, but we haven't talked to you in a while. And I'm just curious as to what's the Maryland situation right now, because it seems like this year things have been a little bit up in the air.
If you could see me, you would see me throwing my hands in the air. I don't know. Basically the situation right now is a lot of things are sort of on hold. So we're racing. The horsemen and track have a contract through the end of the year, but that's it. There's a racetrack operating authority that is tasked with analyzing, sort of quote unquote best models for running thoroughbred racing in Maryland. They're supposed to report to the legislature by December 1st. I would fully expect that their report's going to say that this current model of, a private owner operating the tracks isn't the right one. That would be my guess. I don't know that for a fact, but my guess is that's what they're going to say. And that a model like Naira or Del Mar is a better model. But I don't know. Then there's the whole issue of the facilities that need hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and nobody quite knows where that money would come from. So I hate to say it, Seth, but your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, and it seemed like Maryland was on a good trajectory. First, the whole, going back a few years ago, and Stronach missing out on the slot machines, and you kind of put your hand to your head with that one. But then it seemed like Maryland had gotten back to the right footing and a good trajectory. But again, the last, into this year. Certainly, things are up in the air. And as a racing fan, and just having watched for years and years now, Maryland is just such an important circuit on the American racing scene. We're rooting for things to work down there, but a great way to keep up with it. Again, theracingbiz.com. Frank Vespe and company doing a lot of great coverage of the Mid-Atlantic region, not just the racing side, but the news side as well. So Frank will be checking you out as things progress down there in Maryland, but we appreciate the visit this morning.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure. And by the way, thanks for coming on our show a couple times when you were at Saratoga. Much appreciated.
I always like to evangelize a little bit and get people to come up to Saratoga and enjoy that. We got to get you up there next year.
Yeah, you do have to get me up there next year. I keep having good intentions, but with Timonium and then Colonial, and it's a lot of stuff. But what I need to do is just focus on getting up there early in the meet.
Because I had friends asking for you. I texted you a couple of times, some Frank Vespe friend sightings up there. Very good. Frank, again, appreciate it. We'll talk again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Seth.
Frank Vespe from the Racing Biz. Again, nice little stakes day down at Pimlico yesterday on what was really a nice stakes day overall. The Belmont race was very fun, but then the nice stakes at Woodbine, highlighted by the mile, the 2-year-old stakes, and others down at Churchill yesterday. That Cape Henlopen at Delaware was a lot of fun with cross-border over Tawnyport, and then the Pimlico stakes as well. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. But I will be back in a little less than an hour and a half for OTB Live for Sunday afternoon. Lots of great stakes action today. I have some Belmont at Aqueduct. I have some Churchill, and probably throw a little Saratoga harness in the mix, as we tend to do on Sundays. So all of that coming up. OTB Live for Sunday afternoon. Don't forget Football Sunday here at the Clubhouse Racebook. We'd love to have you stop down and enjoy all the racing action, all the football action, maybe grab a little lunch. Should be a lot of fun here at the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. And once again, don't forget, Friday, I will have a $150 Pick 5 bankroll. The team will get selected online. Entries open on Wednesday at capitalotv.com. And as I said, I will probably open up the entries just about the time I get in here Wednesday afternoon. I'll sit down at the computer and open those up. So, lunchtime or so, things will open up. Put your name in the hat, and we will select the team for the Friday bankroll team. Should be a lot of fun. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Seth Merrow, Racing Across America for a Sunday morning. Again, thanks for joining us. Always appreciate the viewership. Hopefully we gave you some interesting, fun information, entertaining, informative. That's the game plan. And we will try to do more of the same a little bit later on this afternoon when we're back for OTB Live. And as I say, just about an hour and a half, a little less than that or so. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.